Hey, welcome again, and I'm pleased to make this video for you guys again. Just let me know if you have any questions. Don't hesitate to ask me or ask the SI. I know it's a really difficult process, guys, because everything is basically asynchronous, but understand I'm here for you. Understand that you can always reach out to me, or you can always reach out to the SI if you actually have any problems. So don't hesitate to send me an email. Maybe you want me to clarify something more. Please don't hesitate to ask. And I'll keep on making these videos for you guys, okay? Obviously. And I enjoy doing these videos actually. It's just a different part of teaching which I've been explored before. But I'm so far liking it, okay? So today we're gonna be looking at chapter 8, and chapter 8 is actually my favorite chapter in macroeconomics. The reason I studied macroeconomics at a PhD level was because of chapter 8, okay? So when I was in college, I took a course in macroeconomics and we had this chapter. It was something similar, but not exactly the same thing, okay? And it just got me really interested in understanding what we call monetary economics. And monetary economics basically is the economics of money, okay? And that's sort of my favorite concept in or field in economics, and that is where I actually specialized in, okay? So in this chapter, we're examining the relationship between money and the economy, okay? How does money influence the economy, okay? Right. And as you can tell, money influences the economy through basically the price level, and we know the price level is basically linked to inflation, okay? Right. So again, I always go through the learning objectives because I believe once you master the learning objectives, right, it sort of gives you an idea of how the chapter is going to be. And once you have an idea of how the chapter is basically going to be, you sort of master the chapter in and of itself, okay? So the first thing we'll look at is we'll define money and describe its functions. What really is money? So we're talking about money in the general economy, but what really is money, at least from an economist perspective, okay? What are the functions of money? What does money actually do, okay? We'll also explain the economic functions of banks, okay? Why are banks really important, okay? What economic benefits do they actually give us? We'll describe the structure and functions of the Federal Reserve System, also known as the Fed. So basically, the Fed is the central bank of the United States. And when we say the central bank, it's a bank to other banks, okay? So imagine your local bank goes broke, or imagine your local bank needs money. Where do they go? They can't go to any other bank, right? They have to go to the Federal Reserve, okay? So that is the bank to all other banks, okay? We'll also explain and determine the quantity of money and the nominal interest rate. And finally, we explain how the quantity of money, which is called the quantity theory of money, which is actually my favorite theory in macroeconomics, influences the price level and the inflation rate, okay? So the first thing we're going to take a look at is basically what is money, okay? So at this point, I want you to think of different ways you might probably describe money. What really is money, okay? And when you think of money, don't think of income, because income is basically different from money. But the coins, the notes, the dollars, basically, what is it? Okay. And the interesting thing about money, right, which we need to talk about, is money has been around since the very beginning of civilization, right? The Native Americans used to use beads as sort of money. The early American settlers used tobacco as money. Soldiers in prisoner of war camps use cigarettes as money. Prisoners use different items as money, right? So what really is money? Okay, so I don't want your mind to go to, oh, money is just income, because if you take a look back at civilization, money was not necessarily just income. The beads people were using for money, or the tobacco people were using for money, was not necessarily income, okay? Right. So the first thing you need to understand is money is anything that is used as a means of payment, okay? So anything that is basically accepted by a community or by a society and is used as a means of paying for goods and services, right? Or as a means for settling debt, okay? So means of payment means paying for goods and services or settling some type of debt, okay? It's basically money, okay? So for example, I have a pen right here. So imagine me holding a pen, okay? Right? I know it might probably be difficult, but it's just a black pen just to help you out, okay? If everybody on Wartburg, right, accepts that this pen can be used for some sort of payment, then technically this pen is money, okay? So I can trade this pen for other goods, okay? If I have a piece of paper and everybody at Wartburg unanimously agree that this paper is valuable and can be used for exchange of goods and services, then basically I have money. Okay, so money is anything that is generally accepted. So the key word is basically accepted. It has to be accepted. Okay, if it's not accepted, then it can't basically be a form of money. Okay, so money has three functions. Money itself inherently does not have any definition. Money itself is very difficult to define, right? But we're able to define money through its functions. Okay, right. So we have three major functions, and we go through all of these. We have medium of exchange, we have unit of account, and we have what we call store of value. Okay, so these are the three major functions related to money. Okay, right. Now, what does it mean medium of exchange? What does it mean unit of account? And what does it mean store of value? Don't worry, we're actually going to go through them. Okay, so when we say money is a medium of exchange, or basically performs as a medium of exchange, or performs a function of the medium of exchange, a medium of exchange, basically think of it as any item that can be accepted or is used in the exchange for goods and services. Okay, so I walk into Walmart and I want to buy an apple, right? Well, if I want to buy an apple, I need to give them cash in return. Okay, so I give them cash, or let's say I give them a dollar bill, and I get an apple in return. Okay, suppose you go to the mall and you want to buy clothing, right? You give them money. So let's say you give them $50 and they give you a pair of t-shirts in return, a pair of jeans, sorry, not a pair of t-shirt, but a pair of jeans in return. Okay, so the money, the $5, is being used as a medium of exchange. Okay, right. So if we all agree that pen, or my pen, is basically valuable, then we can use it in the exchange of goods and services, and then the pen basically becomes a medium of exchange. Okay, but way back in civilization, early civilization, when there was no money, think of a world when there was no money, people exchange goods and services using other goods and services. Okay, so for example, I wanted an apple. Well, I had to make sure that I actually gave someone something in return for the apple, maybe another good, maybe an orange, or maybe I performed some service for the person. Okay, right? Or maybe I want a t-shirt. Well, I need to make sure I trade maybe the t-shirt for maybe my textbook, or maybe maybe a pen, or maybe a pencil, or whatever, really, right? So to exchange goods and services using other goods and services, we call it barter. Okay, so basically it's called barter. Right, now what is the problem with barter? I want you to sort of pause the video or just think about it for a minute. What is the problem with barter? Why is it so archaic? Why is it that we basically invented money to sort of eliminate the problem of barter? Well, imagine, right? If I wanted an apple and I met someone who actually had an apple, right? I had to make sure that I basically had a good that a person with the apple basically wanted to trade for the apple. Okay, so suppose I want this apple, I meet this person, I say, hey, I want your apple. And the person is like, hey, okay, you know what? I'll give you the apple, all right, but I want an orange in return. And suppose I don't have the orange, then basically I am screwed, okay? So for someone to actually exchange a good for another good, or a service for another service, basically you need to have something that a person is willing to trade for. Okay, so there has to be a double coincidence of wants. Okay, both of you should basically want the same thing, right? Both of you should actually have something that both of you basically want. Okay, so in that sense, it's actually difficult. You have to keep on roaming around, running around, walking around, looking for someone who actually has something you want, and at the same time the person wants something you basically have. Okay, so money was invented, okay, to basically remove this double coincidence of wants. Okay, right, so invented money to facilitate transactions. Okay, the second function of money is basically money as a unit of account. Okay, so when we say unit of account, well, we need to measure goods and services, but how do we measure goods and services, right? We measure goods and services basically using their prices, okay? And money helps us quote goods and services according to their prices, okay? And since we know the price of goods and services, it helps us in comparing the value of two different goods and services, okay? So you don't need to write this table down, but this table is right out from your textbook and basically it gives you an illustration of how money basically places a value on goods and services. For example, you walk into Walmart, everything is basically quoted in dollars, right? You walk into the mall, everything's basically quoted in dollars, right? Everything you basically want to buy is essentially quoted in some form of dollars or some form of money, right? So this classic example looks at different goods, okay? So one stick of gum basically costs 50 cents, okay? And let's say jelly beans, a pack of jelly beans basically costs $1. Well, we know that a stick of gum basically costs 50 cents, so we can sort of say the value of a pack of jelly beans is equivalent to 2 sticks of gum, right? At the same time, let's say my favorite ice cream is vanilla ice cream, okay? Let's say an ice cream costs $2 per cone. Well, we know that a jelly bean or a pack of jelly bean basically costs $1, right? So in that sense, we can say an ice cream basically costs 2 packs of jelly beans. And you can go on and on and on, okay? So money allows us to sort of place value on goods, okay? So an ice cream is basically worth 2 packs of jelly beans based on the fact that we know their prices, okay? And the last thing is basically we have a store of value. So when we say a store of value, it means that money can be stored and used for a later date, okay? We can actually save our money. Suppose I don't want to buy pumpkin pie today and I want to buy it maybe next week. I can actually save my money and decide to buy it next week, okay? Right, so in that sense, money becomes valuable and acts as a store of value, right? Which means that money can be held for a time and later exchanged for goods and services, okay? So these are the 3 main functions of money. We have basically medium of exchange, okay? We have unit of account, and then we have store of value, okay? Well, you probably ask yourself, how does modern money look like, right? How does modern money in the United States basically look like, or how does money in general basically look like? Well, modern money as of 2020 basically looks like money you've already seen before, right? Obviously, there's the advent of digital currency, but most academics or those in academia have not really accepted digital currency fully as money yet, okay? So money in the United States basically consists of currency. And when we say currency, these are the notes and coins, okay? So these are notes and coins that we're looking at. Okay, so we have your notes, right? So you have a dollar note, you have the $2 notes, you have maybe $100 notes, right? And then you have your dime, you have your nickels, and then you have your quarters, right? So that is basically what we mean by currency, okay? That is basically what I mean by currency. So it's notes and coins held by individuals and businesses. And also we have deposits at banks and other depository institutions, okay? So when we say depository institutions, we basically mean other financial institutions that where basically they collect deposits, okay? Where basically they collect different deposits, okay? So deposits at banks, for example, your checking accounts, your savings accounts, right? All these are constituted as basically money, right? Or modern money, okay? So we have currency in circulation, which is the notes and coins held by individuals and businesses. And we have deposits, and deposits are money because the owners can use them to the deposits to basically make payments, okay? So you can actually use money from your checking account, and in some cases, you can actually use money from your savings account to actually make payments, okay? Right, now the amount of money in the United States is actually counted. So the total amount of money in circulation, which is basically currency and deposits at banks, are basically counted by what we call the Federal Reserve, right? Or some other economic institution, but generally it's the Federal Reserve, okay? Right, and we economists, we want to know, right? We want to know the amount of money in circulation, so we basically actually count it, okay? Right, so we actually have measurements of money. right? And the first one, we have measurements of money, and the first one is known as M1. And M1 is also known as narrow money. Why? Because it has a narrow definition of money, right? So we economists really couldn't come up with any creative name, right? We said, okay, M1, what is M1? Okay, M1 is basically money one, right? And well, what is money one? Well, money one has a really narrow definition of money, which we'll actually look at later. So let's just call it narrow money. And then we have M2, which has a broader definition of money. So let's just call it broad money. You know, it basically encompasses almost everything, right? Actually, if you go into the PhD program, it's from M1 to M15, okay? But we don't need to worry about M3, 4, 5, 6 till M15. We just have to worry about M1 and M2, which are the most commonly used ones anyway, okay? Right, what is M1? Well, M1 is basically currency and checking deposits, okay? So checking accounts and currency, and we said currency is basically notes and coins in circulation, is basically money, right? So currency and checking deposits owned by individuals and businesses basically make M1, okay? Right, and M2 basically is all of M1 plus time deposit. So what is a time deposit? Well, a time deposit is a type of deposit in a bank which cannot be withdrawn before a set date, okay? So for example, you put money in the bank and the bank says, hey, you can't withdraw this money till maybe after October 31st, right? That is an example of a time deposit, okay? Right, and then we have savings deposit. So this is your normal savings account. We have money market mutual funds. Okay, so money market mutual funds, basically they pool your money. It's an account system where they pool your money, bear a whole lot of financial securities or portfolios, and you earn some interest on it, and you can withdraw it as often as possible, okay? So since M2 consists of M1, M2 is always going to be greater than M1, okay? Right, so M2 is always going to be greater than M1. So that's something you need to remember, okay? That is something you need to remember, okay? So now if you look at this chart, right, you can actually see M1, which is basically the blue line. And what this chart is saying is that as of September 7, 2020, the total amount of money in checking accounts, right, and basically in circulation is $5.4 trillion. Right, that is a lot of money. 5.5 or 5.4 trillion dollars, okay? Right, and you can notice over here the gray area is basically a recession. Currently we are in an economic recession, right? And generally we look at this more in monetary policy, but generally when there's a recession, the government actually prints more money. Hence you can actually see a quick jump, right, in terms of M1, okay? There's more money in circulation to sort of stem the recession, okay? To sort of stem the recession, okay? And we have M2, which is basically a red line, and the M2 basically consists of time deposit, check on savings account, and other money market accounts, okay? And the total amount in terms of M2 is basically $18.6 trillion, okay? So we have $18.6 trillion worth of currency basically floating around, and you can see the same thing with M2, that during the recession, M2 basically jumps up, okay? Right, so I think this is an interesting graph that basically sort of underlies how money is sort of influential towards trying to reduce recessions, okay? At least in an economy, right? Now, the next question or the next myth we probably look at is, are M1 and M2 really money? Well, we know M1 is definitely money because M1 is made up of currency and checking accounts. And we already established that modern money is made up of currency and checking accounts, okay? But the weird thing is that M2 is not really considered as money because, you know, savings accounts or saving deposits cannot be easily turned into cash, right? So for example, I bank at US Bank, and with my savings account, I can only make a withdrawal 3 times a month. Well, if I need cash and I've already sort of extinguished those 3 times a month, okay, well, then I can't really withdraw any money. So then is it really money? Yeah, is money sitting there, but can I really use it as a means of payment? Well, not exactly, okay? So there's some gray area with M2. Is M2 really money? Well, not really, because M2 is not really what we call liquid. And when we say something is liquid, it means it's something that can be easily converted into cash, Can my savings account be easily converted into cash? Oh, maybe not, right? Maybe not. Depends. If I go past the three times a month limit, I basically can't convert to cash, and it's basically not money. Okay, so M2, we don't really categorize M2 as money. It's mere semantics, and it's sort of a gray area. Okay, the next myth is, well, are debit cards and checks money? Well, no. The plastic debit card, right? The plastic card is basically not money. The debit card basically gives you, or gives the seller or the producer, right, the right to transfer money from your bank. Okay, so think of the debit card, right, as an instruction to a bank to basically transfer money from your checking account for the payment of some good or service. Okay, right, so the debit card itself is not money, but the money in your checking account is basically money, or a check is basically not money, right? But it's basically giving you or the seller the instruction to withdraw money from your checking account. Okay, and finally, are credit cards money? Well, credit cards are basically not money as well. It has the same concept as a debit card. Credit card is basically plastic, and hence is basically not money, right? Also, moreover, a credit card is basically allows you to just get a loan. Okay, so it's an ID that give you instantaneous loans. Okay, it's an ID that gives you instantaneous loan. Remember the credit card, or remember the money, so-called money, right, or the funds on the credit card are basically not your money. You're just loaning money from the bank, which you have to pay later. Okay, so credit cards itself inherently are not money. Money is generally any asset, and any asset is something that you own. An asset is something that you own, something of value that you own. Okay, so long as you don't own those loans which you have to repay, right, then it's basically not money. Okay, the next thing we'll look at is basically depository institution. So what is a depository institution? We talked about a depository institution as being banks, okay, or other financial institutions. Well, think of a depository institution as sort of a middleman between savers and lenders, between savers and borrowers, sorry, as we saw in chapter 7, okay. The money you actually deposit into the bank or into any commercial bank is the same amount of money the bank actually takes and gives out as a loan to someone else. Okay, so all our money you pull together, put into the bank basically takes that same amount of money and gives it out as a loan to someone else, charges interest, and basically makes a profit on it. Okay, so that is an example of a depository institution. So think of a depository institution as a firm that takes deposit from households, right, and other firms, and makes loans to other households or individuals or other businesses. Okay, there are three major types of depository institutions, and we'll go through all of them. Okay, so we have commercial banks, we have thrift institutions, and also we have money market mutual funds. Okay, so when you say commercial banks, well, think of your Bank of America, think of your US Bank, think of your Wells Fargo, okay, think of your Chase, think of your Citibank. Okay, a commercial bank is any institution that is licensed to receive deposits and basically make loans, and that's what all these institutions I've mentioned basically do. Okay, currently in the United States there are about 5,100 and I think 80 commercial banks in total, right? And that is pretty interesting. Okay, that's a whole lot of banks, and of course this is different from like one bank having different branches. It's like 5,200 individual banks. Okay, right, and then we also have thrift institutions. So thrift institutions are basically sort of financial institutions, right, that are created by members and shares profits with their members. Okay, so you have savings and loans associations, savings banks, credit unions. All these are thrift institutions. Okay, and then finally you have money markets mutual funds. Okay, so that is basically sort of a fund operated by a financial institution where they actually pool your money, buy a whole collection of financial portfolio of stocks and bonds, and basically earn interest on that for you. Okay, right, so those are the types of depository institutions we basically have, or the three main types of depository institutions we basically have in the United States. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to look at for this part of the video is basically what are the economic benefits provided by depository institutions. Why? Well, we need to understand the economic benefits banks actually provide because they are really important in society, especially depository institutions in general. Okay, right? So depository institutions provide us with four main benefits. Okay, well, the first one is what we call they create liquidity. Okay, so they're basically able to turn the assets that we own, right, or our deposits into liquid money easily, right? So they're basically able to convert our checking account into money quickly or easily, right? Meaning, suppose you went to a bank and you wanted to withdraw money. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Money in your checking account can easily be withdrawn. Okay, right? They also lower the cost of borrowing. Okay, so in that sense, they're able to match lenders and borrowers easily, right? So there's a really low cost of borrowing, right? If you suppose you want to borrow $100,000 for your business, you don't go around looking for someone who's able to lend you $100,000, right? You just go to the bank, and it's way easier that way. It's way costly. It's way less costly that way. Okay. And also they lower the cost of monitoring borrowers. Okay, so suppose you actually want to lend someone $100,000 for their business. Well, how do you know the person is actually going to repay? Well, the bank actually has the means, or the depository institution basically has the means to basically examine that. Okay, right. So I said four benefits, but there are actually three. The last one is basically they pull risks, but we've learned from the financial recession that that is not really feasible. So there are only three. So I'll just stick with these three for now. Okay. Right. And this is going to end the first part of the video for this chapter. And I'm willing to see you guys. And I'm excited actually to see you guys for the next part of the chapter. Okay. Well, take care.